can just start it off amongst ourselves.
Andy was just telling me that he's already started buying some expired domains.
Nicky got the
I said, watch me lose £10,000 quicker than you can go to the toilet, is what I said, because I'm going to make a bad decision. I have been looking at it on my second screen here.
If you want that, just buy some stocks right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But no, it was I've got to try buying this domain thing. Like I said, I saw Matt Barbie's thing on it, and it's like it looked incredible. Well, just not incredible. Like, I found what was interesting. One of the questions you got asked, Nick, was how do you tell if it's a worthwhile cost? And I think like a longer answer, if you had time watching back Matt Barbie's videos as well, is breaking it down by actually, if you were to build those links, or if you were buying it because of the content, if you were to do that, how much would that cost? And I actually did some maths on a few before your thing and like you can bring the links down to like what would be essentially 30-40 quid rather than your 300 or 400 quid, and your content comes down to 5 or 10 quid rather than I mean assuming it's good, rather than
finding a domain that has good content and good links is definitely like that unicorn scenario.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, I assume the content has to be scrapped as fast as possible every time.
Yeah. No, I've got to. It looks so interesting, but I just don't know how to find them now. But yeah, that was good.
Yeah, domain game is still strong. You can still, if you buy a good trustworthy domain, you can still build a million or like 2-digit million business these days. If you know what you're doing, if you have a good team, this trust is still goes a far way.
And when you put it like that, like £4,000 or whatever, it doesn't. I mean, it's a one-off, one hit, but it spread that over the year or two. It would have cost to build that up. It's nothing really, is it?
Yeah.
Like comparatively, if you put those hours in. So yeah, really interesting.
I think that's also an interesting aspect, right? I think there's still like, especially with domaining or projecting domains or buying domains, I think there's still a big arbitrage you can do. It just has a high upfront cost in some cases, right? And then with expired domains, obviously a much different game, but I think it's still a bit underrated. I've seen some really good projects and businesses lately that I didn't expect to be so valuable, but you can still make a lot of money with those.
At this point, I would just like to encourage our audience to ask us anything, our expert panel, anything about on-page SEO. Of course, off-page is not forbidden, but if you have any questions regarding on-page SEO, just please shoot. Okay.
Kevin, can I ask you a question on, because that's Shopify, that's incredibly exciting. Is the challenges for that? It's a completely different angle then. I knew your background anyway. Fun fact is, I think you sort of rejected me from a job about 3 years ago at G2, but we'll go over that another time over some drinks. No, all jokes aside, like that. That's incredibly exciting, but it's a different direction, isn't it? Like with different challenges, and more interested in what drew you to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, if you're still interested in the job, let's talk. But I think you got your hands full right now. So sorry if I did that. I honestly don't remember. But
oh no, you would have. I failed the psychometric test things because that's not my bag. Those things, I hated them. But those little tests you get.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, G2 was very, very big on these tests. To this day, I don't know if I passed that test back then. I was too scared to look. I got hired in some way. I don't know how. No, but in all seriousness, it's super exciting. It reminds me a lot on Atlassian. I think the businesses are similar in culture as well. Very, very, very engineering driven. Also from a just sheer mindset, and it's a self-serve platform, which is always fun to work with. Working with sales can be fun as well, but I love it when you have like a freemium type of business or like a self-serve type of business where you really look at acquisition, activation, and retention instead of trying to generate high quality leads, which again can also be fun, but I prefer the self-serve model a little bit. And so the challenges are vast, but the opportunities are also very vast. We have a an insanely, obnoxiously big growth team, including a huge dedicated engineering and data science team, which makes things a lot of fun. We can do a lot of fun things as well, and there's way more than just the things that we have on the core Shopify domain, which is also a lot of fun. It's also an international business, and we have very, very strong aspirations to grow. So with more power comes more responsibility, and so we have to pick our battles, right? We have to focus not just on the type of like content we create, on the technical SEO levers that we pull, but also on the countries that we go after, right? There are some countries with amazing potential out there, but they all have their own unique challenges. One example is I was born and raised in Germany, and things like compliance and GDPR are much, much bigger in Germany and just in Europe as a whole. And so then you run into situations where in the US you have a really strong brand and you're known for topics like dropshipping, for example, and entrepreneurship. But then in European markets, you have to have stronger product market fit first. You have to come with certain features, and topics like dropshipping might have a negative reputation. So there's that whole kind of challenge that translates to SEO, as in like how easy it is to generate backlinks, how authoritative your content is, and all these kind of things. So it goes from the strategic to the tactical very quickly. But it's super exciting. We have world-class teams there. We have executive buy-in, and we have people with very, very interesting and exciting backgrounds. So it's a pure joy. But I'm also very new to the company, and there's so much to learn.
Yeah, I bet.
And who, if you don't mind me asking, who are some of the largest brands currently running Shopify?
So Gymshark, Allbirds, tons of celebrities have their merchandise stores on there, and we have an own program just for that.
I guess I'm thinking mainly through like who's doing like high volume, like who are the brands doing like 100,000 transactions a month and more like on Shopify?
Yeah, I would say like Gymshark is one of the best practices. It's interesting also, like there's some not old school brands, but more traditional classic brands who started to go on Shopify. I think Heinz Ketchup is one of the most interesting ones, where when the pandemic broke out, they immediately in the UK spun up a shop on Shopify and started to pull major volume. So that's just, it's kind of those stories that are almost more impressive than the biggest companies that had a long time to create their shops, because these hard business pivots that are exciting.
The main reason I ask is, I mean, and this is just my very tiny, minuscule window into the e-commerce world, but like, in my experience, over and over and over again, when e-com companies get to 50, 100 million, even if the Shopify is the map that gets them there, they almost always move off and go custom, because they hit a place where they want more control with it. Like they want a tighter integration with their data stack. They want more control and integration with their call centers. Like you get to a point of scale where I think it's hard for Shopify to hold on to those, 100 million, 200 million, $500 million e-com companies. Like how do you? Yeah. How is it, like how I realize that's probably like one of the big mountains the product team has to try to figure out, but like it's a big mountain.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So, and I'm saying that because it's sure in a couple of cases it makes perfect sense, right? In a couple of cases you don't just, it's very similar to other applications as well, like a CMS or stuff like that, where you just you stop getting out of the box. However, we also had a couple of cases, and I probably won't name them, but a couple of cases where companies did that, and then they encountered major issues, and they came back to Shopify. So I think there's a sort of scalability, and we also have our enterprise program, which is Shopify Plus, which is a lot more kind of a concierge service that people value, similar to how like some big brands are still on WordPress.com because they get an amazing concierge service. So I think the rate so far is an aspect of huge companies going full custom, but we also have a very long tail of merchants that are small or medium sized, right, who are perfectly happy with Shopify, who contribute a big part to our business. And I think that's also where also something we want and that we want to encourage, right? I think the big players and big merchants are very important to us, but if we were too dependent on them, that would also be unhealthy and risky for our business. And at the same time, Shopify should really become a platform for everyone. So it is a very interesting distribution of merchant size over time. And the drop-off rate is not as big as you would think. But of course, in some cases, merchants, and they should totally do that. They should do what's best for their business. We're not trying to lock them down into, or kind of create these kind of lock-in effects where people can't migrate away from Shopify.
That was an awesome answer. Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. I actually have to jump to a meeting, but that made it all worthwhile. So thank you so much for that answer.
Sure.
And, it's been a blast hanging out with everybody else here today. So thank you, everybody. Hopefully I'll see you guys all again soon.
Absolutely.
See you later, Nick.
Thanks so much, Nick, for your contribution and for making it to the second panel, at least briefly. Nick told me that he has other meetings, but offered to attend, so that's deeply appreciated. Now we got a couple of questions in, so let's just go at it one at a time. So the first question is, Yoast SEO is still trying to make keyword saturation a thing. How do you go about keyword saturation in on-site content?
So is this referring to like the keyword density thing that they have, where they keep telling you to add the keyword more times? Because I've always thought that Yoast is a little too aggressive with their numbers. We use Clear Voice, which I find is a good kind of in between, where it tells you, it looks at all the current search and how many times they mention the keyword and all that, and it gives you little ratings based on what they think you should do keyword density wise. But it has to make sense. Don't just stuff the keyword in there. Like, that's from many years ago, right? I use Yoast as almost like a checkbox. Like, I did check to make sure I use this as many times as appropriate, not I'm just in here making sentences up to add this word over and over again, because if it doesn't sound right, it won't succeed. People will notice that immediately.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think to play a little devil's advocate also, it's I think I get where Yoast is coming from. It's really difficult to provide fantastic keyword recommendations in the age of entity optimization. I think because they have they're one of the largest apps on WordPress, and I think they just want to cover their bases and just give people somewhat like basic guidelines. Maybe they can phrase things a bit softer, right? My assumption is that they just want to provide some guidelines for the general public who's not very familiar with SEO specifically, and they just want to kind of give people a little bit of help.
Oh yeah, totally. I think it's like I said, it's great to have like the indicator, like make sure that you're looking at this, but don't worry if you're not hitting the exact number that they're giving you.
I totally agree with you. I'm all with you there.
Okay, awesome. Let's go to Danny. How do you guys think about optimizing e-commerce product category pages, on-page content for commercial terms, while not hurting user experience conversion?
Yeah, such a good question. Andy, you go first. I speak all the time. I'm sorry.
Oh no, sorry, Kevin. If you want to go. Well, yeah, okay. Well, I'm sure Kevin's got a lot more insights on this at Shopify. But I think the biggest mistake, what I always see is, and interestingly, we had this call with a client recently. And it's a very hot topic at the moment, this idea of intent. And I know, I think Kevin and Amanda, I don't think you were here earlier, so I'm sort of repeating myself if there's anyone else who was here earlier when I did my thing. But when we pull through the keywords, we look at if it's an article or if it's a product page ranking, and it's always one or the other, right? So, well, sometimes you can have fragmented intent where it's half and half the things that are ranking are a blog type, top 5 this, top 6 that, or a product page, but it's never one page that ranks for both. So we had a call with a client recently, and they were like, look, we don't have the budget to roll out content to target these terms. Can we instead push out our product page and answer all these questions on here? And we're like, no, that's not a good idea, because what you're doing then is you're confusing the intent. And in fact, John Mueller actually, and I think Nick said it perfectly earlier, whatever Google says, it's, just take it with a pinch of salt, they're a business. But John Mueller said something I've felt for a long time, which was, look, don't confuse the intent. Google knows what an e-commerce page is. You don't need to build it out with all these other questions and stuff. So I think to answer your question simply from my point of view, providing you've got your facets right and you're targeting the right term, and the product page you've got exists because it needs to, i.e. there's search volume for it and people need it. Keyword in the page title, a little description, make sure everything else is good, like technical wise. I don't think you need to be focusing time on creating a load of content for that page, which will just end up confusing what that page is, which is an e-commerce or a product page. But yeah, Kevin, you go.
Sorry, man, didn't mean to cut you off there.
no,
Amanda, do you
all
want
right.
to go first? Because I don't want to overrun everybody.
Yeah, no, you go.
Okay.
I'm done.
Okay, cool, awesome. No, I think it's an interesting question because there's some really cool best practices out there of content, and I agree with you, Andy. It doesn't always have to be this like 5,000 word article that is kind of surrounded by a wrapper of a category page. On the flip side, what I've seen, and I've repeated these experiments multiple times, is that content still has an impact. We saw that at G2. I saw that at some e-commerce businesses, even at companies like eBay. And luckily, this is long ago enough for me to speak about it, but we invest a lot of time in just like adding content to category pages. The content has to be relevant though. It has to have a real user benefit. And that's where I think you can bring a piece of customer service to your category page simply with content. It doesn't have to be this whole, oh, what is a toothbrush? You use a toothbrush to clean your teeth. No, like, help customers with the content. If it's helpful and useful, then it actually makes a lot of sense. And one of the most beautiful examples that I keep citing is Wayfair. Just Google dog beds Wayfair and scroll to the bottom and expand that content and check it out. And I think that brings the message way better across than anything I can talk about here.
Okay, then we will be moving on to Carolis, and she asks, what would be suggestions for Shopify app which is creating own website and trying to increase sales? Focus on creating buckets with topics, marketing comparison, etc., or focus more on solo blogs, articles, how does app help for Shopify store, etc. Thank you for your answers. Learned a lot today. Smile.
Well, thanks, Carlos, for the question. So the question is focus on creating buckets with topics or solo blog articles. Well, honestly, I would probably do a little bit of both. Don't mean this to be a cop-out answer, but I think it's very hard to just say do this and then you're good. I think you have to today, if you want to build a Shopify store, you have to build almost like a brand, right? You can't just look at it like a generic kind of project that kind of simmers on the side. You have to invest a little bit of effort into it. And so when you talk about creating buckets with topics, yeah, sure, I would use collections, and I would make sure that these collections are filled with products. That's the regular Shopify taxonomy. And at the same time, I would also create some content on these shops. I would also add some content to category pages. So I think especially when you have a product with a wide application, and you can maybe bring some, I want to use a buzzword, but like influencers or people in the space who have a following on your site and collaborate with them, even in something like a video, which you then post on your blog. That's a nice integration of content. And I think that brings some real SEO benefits as well, because maybe you get some backlinks, you get, stronger brand exposure, you get more mentions across the web. All these are super helpful. So do both. Start with collections or the buckets that you mentioned. So you want to make sure that your collection pages are in line, your product pages are optimized, meaning title, description, images, you have some content, you have some high quality images, especially alt text and images, and then you focus on creating a bit of a wider top of the funnel on your blog, which I think at the moment we call news on Shopify. When it comes to apps, there are a couple of good SEO apps on our app store. We're also continuously adding a couple more. I can't call one out specifically because at Shopify we're trying to, not side too much with a single app, but there are lots of good ones out there. And I'm happy to refer you to an article where we maybe put together a list of good apps that you can use for SEO.
Okay, awesome. Thanks a lot for that, Ken. Maybe you can add it to your slides or just send it to me separately, and we will send it to all the attendees.
Yep.
Okay, next question. Assuming their technical and offsite SEO are on point, can a recently launched competitor outrank you by spinning your content? Who wants to go?
I mean, there's so many variables there. The sad reality is, if all things being equal, they could, like, it's the same with syndicated content. The original might end up, the other one might outrank the original, whatever. It's to what degree is it being span at? Do we mean they're literally copying the site word for word, or are they doing it but writing it better? I've seen, but to answer the question, someone could steal content and rank it better than you, all things being equal. But that's when you get in touch with them and ask for takedown requests and go down that route. I have seen it, but I think there's too many variables to answer that question simply from my point of view. I don't know if you guys had any input.
Okay. Would you like to add something?
I've heard of it happening, which is why I can't say it doesn't, which just sucks. I can only just commiserate with those people. Yeah, I don't think, it's not fair, but I do think that it happens. I don't know, like Andy was saying, there's so much that goes into it. I don't even know how to prevent it from happening, but I think it can.
I agree with everyone, with Amanda and with Andy. I think it's a rare edge case. I think there are a couple of things that you can put in place. Like if you see a site spitting your content, I would certainly disavow them just to send a distrusty signal to them. I would also make sure that you have things like the publish date and maybe modified date on your content. You don't try to hide that, so that it's easier for Google to understand who published the content first. And then I think there's also a way to just build out like a stronger footprint across the web for your own brand. But other than that, I think it's a relatively rare edge case. And I haven't seen any profitable site that spun content out there. I think that these are all if they tried, these are short-term projects, and after a while, Google crushes them down. So I wouldn't be too worried about it.
Awesome. So the next question would be, for e-commerce sites, I've heard that building links to product pages is risky. Do you agree? And is the play to build content pages and tangential content like Amanda spoke about, and really optimizing your internal links to product pages to increase their ranking power?
It's something I spoke about earlier. So it depends what the product is. If it's, I think my analogy I used earlier is if it's something really unsexy, I think like Nick sold traffic cones. My friend sells steel doors. My other friend sells like water condensers. If it's something really unsexy, and you can tell that just from looking at the site, it's one of them cause or effect type things, and I'll explain what I mean by that. If I'm looking at a site for their link profile, something who sells doors or traffic cones, and all the links are to product pages, before I've even looked at those links, I know they're going to be shitty, because why is someone linking to traffic cones? There's just no reason for it. And I guess what I'm saying, the cause and effect is actually, was it because they're selling something unsexy? Like generally, because they're having to get those links to the product pages, where they're getting those links from are generally quite shitty as well, because they're generally paid. You can't get a good site to link to a thing on traffic cones. The caveat to that is if you're selling something cool or something original, or so. Again, I use this example. We launched we call it a fake product. It was a PR stunt. We launched a fake product for my friend's startup company. It was a made-up table that could lock your phone in during COVID, so that around the dinner table people could spend more time together. Completely fake product. It was more of a PR stunt. We stuck a ridiculous price on it so that if someone did order it, we'd at least make a profit on it. But that was fine to build links to, because it was just a weird product. And we didn't have that product there as a product. We then actually filtered those links out to, we talked about Hojc on it and whatever, and then we filtered that link equity out to our product pages. So I think, to answer your question from my point of view, quite simply, is it's not spammy in itself. Like it's not bad that you are building links to your product pages. It's just 9 times out of 10, I haven't seen a business where the links to a product page would make sense. Like, why would you get them? So generally those links are in themselves bad to get them to those product pages. which is why I found the best tactic is, especially with 90% of businesses out there, to focus on your tangential content, as Amanda said, or build out your blog, build links to them, because you can get links a lot easier, a lot more organic. You can get better links, and then drive that equity to your product pages. Would be my input on that one.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of clients come to us with this exact problem. They're thinking, how can we build the authority of our brand when we can't get links directly to our product pages? And in the example of traffic cones, they would come to us and be like, what are we going to say about traffic cones that anybody cares about? Okay, well, let's think tangentially. Now we're open to all cars and just automobiles. And then you can come up with I can't tell you how many projects we've done in that sphere of things. And you can get media coverage that way. So really, the tangential route, I think, is ideal in this situation. If like Andy said, you don't have products that just inherently are worth being linked to directly in a non-spammy way.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Like there's just some pages that people would not naturally link to. We had the same issue with category pages at G2, and I think that's where a good content marketing strategy can help out.
Okay, so let's go to Alex. Alex wants to know off-page SEO questions. So off-page, I find that a lot of websites, especially news sites, republish our content in full. While it's nice to get the link, I internally link within my content with exact match anchors, which I'm afraid might cause some problems. Example, if 50 people republish my article in full, there are then 50 exact match anchors pointing to my money pages, which I'm afraid Google might see as over-optimizing. Also, I find that some of the people who share their article in full are actually outranking us, even though they give an attribution link at the bottom. How would you deal with this, or is this something I should even be worried about? Who's going to take it?
It's down to this content syndication, isn't it? I'm just trying to get my head around the question. So you publish content, and then a news site, have you syndicated to the news site? Is that what I'm getting? And then the news site
republishes in full.
But loads of news sites republish it. Is that the question? Because I guess how are you getting it to those news sites? Because the way I see that sometimes happening is if you're submitting it to one of those sites that push it to all the news sites for you, in which case they're normally pretty shitty anyway. If it's a news site who's approached you and asked to it, I'd always be asking for the canonical. So I guess my answer to it is if the reason all these news sites are publishing it with exact anchor text back is because you've gone to one of these online things where you push it to them and they for 50 quid and they'll put you on 100 news sites, I'd say don't do that. Funnily enough, about 4 or 5 years ago, I tried doing that and I got penalized.
They commented, I do email outreach for link building and they end up republishing it in full. They just followed it.
I do email outreach for link building, and they email. Oh,
that's interesting. I've never actually seen when they republish the entire article you send them.
Yeah, I would have thought. I mean, Amanda, you've definitely got more experience in this than me, but I would have thought they would only want it if you weren't publishing it yourself, type thing. Am I right on that one? Or
yeah, that's why I was a little confused too, Alex, because usually if you already publish it on your site, they don't typically want it. So that's why I don't know how to answer because I'm not sure of the situation. Usually when like Andy was saying, we'll pitch something and once it's in the news, then it'll syndicate their story, their version of it will syndicate everywhere. It won't be something that's directly on our site. So are you literally taking an entire article that was published on your site, pitching it to a writer, and then they're publishing the exact thing you sent them? Because that's, I think, where the confusion is.
I mean, if that is...
Wow. Okay. Yeah, this is not. I feel like this isn't difficult, so this is an interesting question.
In which case, I'd question the outlets you're sending them to. It'd be interesting to see them because, and again, Amanda, you'll know more on this than me, but when I've dipped in a little bit of PR that I've tried with varying degrees of success, the ones that were all too happy to republish something that I already had were generally quite poor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry.
I totally agree with you, Andy. I think it might be like the reason why this could be a risk is if it's low quality sites that are doing it over and over and over again, that could send a bad signal that you're reaching out to people who don't have, and we don't know. It's not really a huge news site, but rather small blogs and sites with DR 10 to 60, not big news sites. Yeah, so it's probably lower quality sites that are just kind of putting things out there. You can build links that way, but they're not going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. Kevin, you want to
I think
something to add?
Yeah, no, I think everything has been said.
Okay. Okay, so we can check this question off. Yeah. Now, another question, a bit different from the previous question, but what would be your best tip for an aspiring PR looking for work? With no university qualification, but a portfolio full of placements and pieces.
Why don't you email me, because we're hiring.
There you go. Solution, Bob.
Or actually, I think currently, this is not, I work at the agency, so I know that the PR team at Fractal is hiring. But you can email me and I'll pass it along. So my email address again is amanda@frac.tl. But otherwise, looking for work, I mean, from what I found, and I can only speak on behalf of Fractal because I've been there for 6.5 years, so I don't know how other agencies or other companies operate, but the fact that you have placements and pieces, that's going to speak volumes over education, and the fact that you've done this before is huge. So just make sure you focus on that in your pitch, like say, or not your pitch, your resume or your cover letter. Say, include examples of your pitches or show all the places you've gotten published. I'm sorry if you've been pitching, submitting applications and it hasn't been working out very well, but I think a lot of agencies right now are hiring. If you've never done this work before, agencies are a great place to start. You learn very quickly. They'll throw you right in and you'll pick things up pretty fast, and then you can move on from there. Yeah, follow all these agencies on Twitter. Follow the people that you admire, engage with them, and I hope you land something soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. Kevin, Andy, or
definitely not my area. That's the.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. But one thing that I quickly want to add is just for more people to display their work in public. Of course, there's sometimes work that you can't speak so openly about, but I think way too many people, they don't have a personal site. They don't have some showcases or put their thoughts out there or something, I think it's such a nice business card and almost more powerful than a resume when you have some really good content on your own personal site. Just demonstrate how you think and how you work. It's very easy. So that's what I want to add.
Yeah,
just go to kevinindig.com.
For example.
I can add something, not from obviously not a PR point of view, but how I got my first job in digital marketing was quite interesting. So basically, my background, I previously had a business, and when I grew the business using SEO, it was a small e-commerce, and I grew it to quite a large e-commerce store. And when I sold the business, I really wanted to get into marketing. So, because that's the part of it I enjoyed, not the HR and dealing with all that stuff. So I was applying for jobs, and my CV basically said director, and people just weren't taking me seriously. So I had an interesting other point of view where I think people thought I had too much experience, because I was just going in. I wanted to experience with, my goal was to get experience at an agency, a global agency, so I could get experience with working with large companies, your Amazons, your Netflixes, because I'd had experience with a small company, which is quite easy to do SEO on. It's very easy to go from nothing to something. So I wanted to go from something to something bigger. So I was applying all these jobs and getting nowhere. So in the end, I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to do this differently. So I actually made a website called whyemployandychadwick.com. I don't know if it's still up, actually. It's quite embarrassing if I look back on it. It gets better. So I found the head of HR. So I joined an agency called Crowd, which is a global agency. They were based in London, but had offices in Shrewsbury, New York, and wherever. And I found the head of HR there, her name Heidi, and I found her on LinkedIn, and I sent her my website on an email, and then I made sure that when she clicked it, I put up a load of paid ads, and all the paid ads were retargeting Heidi everywhere. And then I had a paid campaign that was targeting, I knew roughly where she'd be based, so I targeted the keyword crowd agency, and I think I spent about 30 quid on it. So anyone who Googled crowd within a 5-mile radius of Shrewsbury, I came up saying, you've already seen my CV, why not employ me? So I did that, and she eventually gave me a call back from that. So that is a way how I got my first job in digital marketing. Not that one. That's my new one. Let me hang up. Why? It's literally why employ Andy Chadwick. Why employ Andy Chadwick. .co.uk maybe.
Yeah, because you're basically showing that you're using your skills to market yourself. Like if you're trying to get a job in marketing, people are like tend to be impressed if you're able to market yourself pretty well.
Yeah, I think it's whyemployandychadwick.co.uk, but I'm not sure if it's still up because I stopped paying for the domain name after a while, but it might be there somewhere on the Wayback Machine. But that's how I got my first job in digital marketing, if that gives you any ideas.
That's cool.
Okay. Awesome. I think that is a great suggestion. I think if you can build your own online profile by having a website and with really cool content that everybody can read, it's just the best business card that you can possibly get.
I thought of something for Alex, who was talking about he was sending, or she was sending, they were sending stories to publishers who were like republishing it. Not that I recommend doing this, but if you're doing the strategy, because I do think the links are kind of meh. But if you are going to do that, try not having that same content on your site to begin with. If you're just doing it for the backlinks anyway, just send them like a guest post and just don't have the exact article on your site, so it's not like completely duplicative. It doesn't really solve the problem of like everybody linking to you in the same way, but that way it's not like something that lives on your site and lives also on all these kind of spammy-ish ones. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, thanks Amanda. We have another. Alex says thank you, and Jerry asks, question for Andy and Kevin: what's the best workaround for faceted navigation for Shopify stores?
Is this based off a recent article I posted? Kevin, I don't know if you want to take this.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, this is on a radar. Certainly something we're looking to change in the future. Second, there is a workaround which is a bit more tricky right now, where you can nest collections on our collection pages. I'm also happy we have a description on our community for that. I'm happy to shoot the link over to that. But Andy, your article was much appreciated. We certainly circulated that within Shopify, and it really helped us to think about the problem.
I appreciate that. I was trying to make. I get on really well with Jackson. He's fantastic. I was trying to make sure the article was balanced in that it's not just Shopify. It's actually a problem with WooCommerce out the box as well. It's a problem with Wix. It's a problem with every single CMS I've had. It's just most big e-commerce stores I've worked with are Shopify, so that was why the focus was on that one. But yeah, if someone can crack that soon, that would be amazing.
All right.
Yep.
I was going to say, Jerry, from my side of view, what I would do is that we've got a big. So if you have read the article, if that's why you've asked the question, in that example, I moved someone off of Shopify. The reason being is I've got more familiarity with WordPress, and WordPress developers are a lot cheaper. But it was a really low risk, and that's the main thing I wanted to get across. It was really low risk because the site didn't rank for anything anyway. I have another client who is gigantic, and they're on Shopify, and it's a big problem is their faceted navigation, and it's just not worth the risk for any point. It's just not worth it to move them off of it. So we're getting around it by just making sure that we really nail the collections that we do have. We're very selective with what then sits in the information architecture, with what sits in the menu, and then we just make sure our internal linking strategy is solid. So if there is a collection, we have had a bit of custom dev work done on the collection pages to make sure we can add some content on it or something. And then we make sure like our internal linking to other similar collections is just solid. And it's going well. We are increasing their organic traffic. It's just it's a little bit harder to manage, but it's not worth the risk to move any site from anywhere or fundamentally change anything, is what I would say.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Andy. We have currently no questions. We have 10 more minutes for the Q&A before our virtual happy hour, for which I will be equipped with a beer. And you're all also free to grab one. But maybe in these 10 minutes, we could just address a couple more topics that would be interesting for our audience.
Yeah, can I ask a question to the panel? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Andy,
oh, no, you keep doing it. You go.
I wanted to ask you, Andy, and you, Amanda, what is something currently in SEO or digital marketing even that it's really exciting you, that you're very, very curious about, maybe even outside of the topic you spoke about?
Oh, that is a good question.
Honestly, all I'm thinking about right now is Clubhouse and how much time I should be dedicating to it.
Ditto.
I was very overwhelmed when I first joined that app. Also, if you're watching this and you want an invite and you have an iPhone, I have a few invites, so if you email me, I'll invite you in. But I don't know if you both are in there, but I was completely overwhelmed when I first joined. It was like, you have to be really on top of following certain people and groups to start getting things that are more related to what you do. But it is, I was actually in groups talking about like, what's the value of Clubhouse and like, why do people want to use it? It seems, I think it's the spontaneity of it. It feels so much more like intimate when you're just randomly in a group of like experts talking about something, which is different from there's clubhouses or clubs with like hundreds, if not thousands of people in it listening to experts, which feels like an event. But there are also times when it's like 6 people who are talking about something interesting in SEO or something, and it's like this very interesting stage of the app right now, I think, where you can get on there and you have to like really work for it though to find interesting stuff. What has been your impression?
I've joined some of those random groups. I mean, they've got some funny names, haven't they? I've listened in some random stuff I wouldn't have normally got any insight into, which has been interesting. I do like it. I'm perhaps not on it as much as I should. So Siganthan, my business partner at Snippet, he's a fanatic on it. He's always messaging me, "Oh, can you jump on it?" And I've got things to do, man. But I know it is interesting, and I do like it. I'm interested to see how it's. I read something about how they were monetizing it. I still don't understand how they're going to monetize it. I don't understand the trajectory it's going in. It all seems a bit random for me at the moment.
I think they just published a press release where they announced that they're going to start by selling tickets and tipping creators. Oh,
that's a different.
There's another platform that does that, right? I forgot which one that relies on tips.
Twitch.
Twitch, right. Thank you. I saw some people suggesting that it might go that way. I didn't know they released a press release on it. I had already seen people's profiles saying tips appreciated with like their Venmo or something.
Oh wow, with Venmo. Yeah, it's interesting. I think they also just raised another round. They're valued now at $1 billion. They also just doubled their user base. So I'm just as hooked about it as you are, Amanda. I really have to put a lot of effort into when I have some work time to not just go on the app and see what room is or session is open right now. It has such a strong pull. Yeah,
the FOMO aspect of it, because literally these conversations could be happening. I'm like, I was in one the other night, I was making dinner and I joined it, and then they added me as like being able to speak. I was like, oh my God, I'm not like prepared for this at all. I don't know what's happening, but it's cool. Like that's not something you get anywhere else. And I think that's why the draw is so strong.
Yeah, the ephemerality, right? Like similar to Snapchat or Instagram stories where you know it's going to go away.
Right.
And it's a one-time thing on Clubhouse, right? They really, if you try to record this session with your phone, they're giving you a pop-up saying you cannot record this. So they really want to. I think it's such a smart play, but it's also something so new and fresh and exciting, especially in times where everybody's burned out from Zoom meetings. You just have this audio thing where you can literally do something else on the side, like be part of the conversation if you want to, or just listen passively.
I think for me, I could say machine learning and AI and stuff because that's what my talk was on, but I think that's what everyone's talking about. So other things I'm looking into, sure, I've got no expertise, obviously none. I just find it so fascinating, for better or worse, as these sort of alternative types of marketing going on. So as an example, I've got a friend who works at Adobe, and they were trialing something with BMW where when you walked into the BMW garages, all the cameras were using AI to try and work out your age and your gender, and the adverts would all change to match as you were walking through based on what it thought you were. I mean, for better or worse, some people might be freaked out by that. I don't care, I quite like it. What's another cool one I've seen? Getting ad placements in like dynamically in games. So like getting ads, I think Fallout or something do it, I can't remember, but where the ads are like being put in games and stuff. I think that's all really clever. And then for my startup client, actually, the one I mentioned where we did that PR campaign with the table, he actually won a grant from Sky to, I think he won about a £10,000 grant to try Sky smart ads. So we had to go with that, and it was really interesting to see how we could target on the TV and these other forms of channels I wouldn't normally delve into. I'm just having a little exploring just out of interest. And that sort of stuff excites me. That's really cool. Interesting.
Yeah.
Which is why when you asked your question on Twitter, Kevin, about what other forms of channel would you have if there wasn't, Google or whatever, I found it quite interesting one because it is something I've been reading into lately, like all these other weird ones that I just wouldn't have thought about before.
Yeah, I love that take. How do you think about the future of that? Like, where do you see that going in the next 1 to maybe even 3 years?
It's going to go one or two ways, isn't it? It's going to keep going and get cleverer and more targeted in cameras, or the EU is going to clamp down on it and we're going to go back to brochures through the doors. That's the way I see it, because I just think there's so many rules coming out, and I'm hoping ways I found around it. Like all these things on cookie policy, I just think it's made user experience worse. Like I said, the thing with BMW, it actually, I'd imagine. I don't know if I'm one of a few, but I find it quite cool, even if I knew what was going on. I think that's clever. I like that. But I don't know. How about you? What would you think?
It is an interesting conversation. I don't think Google can be that easily closed out. I think there were many cases where publishers tried to get paid for their content. It never really worked out. There's this deal that French publishers made with Google, which really surprised me. I didn't see that coming at all. But I don't think it's like, especially the ask from the Australian government to Google are completely unrealistic, as like 28 days heads up of a new algorithm change and those kind of things. I think websites need Google much more than Google needs websites. And I'm saying that because the system is built in a way that a single website cannot opt out and achieve anything by that. They can just hurt themselves. What would really have to happen is a whole industry of sites to opt out, or a huge player like a Booking or an Amazon, who also, by the way, pay huge amounts in Google Ads, are big spenders as well. So I don't see that happening anytime soon. What I could see happening more even is, to come to close the circle to machine learning, is that Google just creates more content themselves with machine learning based on what they find on the web. The technology similar to like GPT-3. And this is not supposed to be like a prediction of like, oh, SEO is dead and Google will just replace all the websites. But, I think the trajectory that they're on with the knowledge graph and with featured snippet, I can see that increasing over the next couple of years. But I don't think there's a lot of merit to Google paying websites or that the publishers have higher leg up over Google in that sense.
Do you think Google could become a victim of its own success if it keeps stealing people's content? People will go, well, why am I bothering?
I think it already is.
The flights.
Less so in like stealing people's content, because the returns of Google traffic are still way too good. But I think Google is a victim of its own success because they weren't able to diversify their revenue streams. They still make way too much money from ads. And I think that pushes them to the corner where they just have to become more aggressive about ads to squeeze more out, because they have to increase their profits over time. So I think that kind of ad load is going to become more aggressive, and they they really need to find new revenue streams. I think that YouTube offering subscriptions, those kind of things, that's probably where Alphabet as a holding company tries to go. But Google itself, I think, is not in the best spot, to be honest. I mean, they just announced record profits and revenue again in Q4 of last year. But I think I don't see where Google will where they find their new revenue stream. I know that YouTube has a higher share and that Google Cloud has a higher share, but I don't see this next big thing. And I think that's going to be a problem also for SEO over time.
Guys, we got another question in to wrap up the Q&A from Jerry. To Kevin, how granular do you break down intent categories when doing keyword research? Can you share with us what buckets you decide on and how you identify them?
I love that question because I spend a lot of time creating content around that. And I think that we simplify intent way too often. I think it goes way beyond the just transactional, informational, navigational. I think Google knows probably thousands of finer intents. And so I recently published an article called Fragmented User Intent, or Solving Fragmented User Intent, in which I distinguish between, I think it was 10 to 15 different intents. But I think even that doesn't go far enough. I think there's a lot more nuance, and I think that the SERP features are a great way to reverse engineer user intent and get a better understanding what Google is looking for. It also changes on a consistent time. So yeah, I think that would be my short answer.
And that was basically what my talk was about today, about how different SERP, how different user intent influences the SERP features, and was based on the sister study, which you also mentioned in one of your articles,
Yes,
mobile study in July of last year, and how dramatically click rates change when the user intent is to buy or do something, compared to just simple organic queries or even website queries.
Exactly.
Okay, so does that answer his questions? Can you share with us what buckets you decide on, how you identify them? Okay. Does anyone else want to take a stab at this question before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, when I do, so the new thing we've literally just developed, hoping to release it to the public in about 2-3 weeks actually, is so we did, like, we had a V1 and it did what Kevin said, and it broke when for each keyword it pulled through, it used live SERP results, so it was right at the time, as Kevin said, it does change. It was right at the time that it was pulled, and we used live search results. We used the SERP features, and we laid NLP on top of it, and we tried to work out and it broke it down into like transactional, commercial, visual, and all this other shit. And when I've got to be honest, when I was trying to advise a client on what content to produce, I was so blown away by how much, I was so overwhelmed by how much it was. I just thought, nah, fuck this. We need to scale this back and make it a lot simpler. So we've still got that feature, and if you want to know what certain features it can be useful, it's definitely useful if you want to, as an answer to your question earlier, get more organic traffic through other channels. So if you want to make YouTube videos and there's visual gets pulled through, that YouTube videos and images are going to be there. But we scaled it right back, and the product we're releasing, basically, for each keyword, it has 3 columns. It says, is it an article / long form, product or category page, or other type page? And for each keyword in each column, it'll like rank it. So if the keyword was memory foam mattress, you might see 4, 5, and 0. And what that's saying is 4 results on Google are articles, 5 are product or category pages, and 0 couldn't be classified. And I guess it is grossly simplifying it. And Kevin might say I'm wrong, but personally, when I'm working with data like that, where it's literally, okay, shit, I need a product page, or I need a blog page, it's so much simpler for me. So yeah, we have experimented with bucketing all these different intents, but at the end of the day, when I want to make content, is it a long form one, or do I need a blog article, or is it a category page, or can I have 2 ranking? Again, the example, if you went on it earlier, I gave is, I get excited if I see in the columns it says 5 and 5, because it means it's fragmented intent, right? It means you can have 5. It means you can have a product page and a blog page ranking. And generally speaking, if there's a blog page ranking, it's because it's that sort of list type thing, you know, top 5, top 6, top 7. And if that's the case, you can actually get 70% visibility on the SERPs. And how I've worked that out is you get your product page ranking, so there's 1. You get your blog page ranking, there's 2. And then on the other 5 blog pages that other people have written, you then try and get included on their list as well. So there's another 5. So that's how our strategy goes. Like, let's get 70% visibility. So that's how we've done it. Personally, I just found it easier to work with. Like, does it have a video, and do I need a blog or category page? And I made it a lot simpler like that. And that's based on a pre-trained model of over, I think we pre-trained 20 million keywords or something ridiculous. So it's pretty accurate as of now. Like Kevin said, it can change, but we'll just keep training it.